So it's the 244 flow chart essentially. So what do you want to do? We've already talked about estimating parameters. We've talked about it almost into the dirt, so I'm going to stop talking about that. Now we're testing parameters. We're testing whether or not parameters have changed. Yet last week and half of the week before, we were talking about testing averages and proportions. And how many were one? One each, one average or one proportion. We ended up last week by testing a matched pair, which is a pre-post test. And those were fun. Those were fun. We did 2 of those in class. Those are good. Those are real good. But now the question is, what happens if you have more than just one parameter to test? Some could argue that a matched pair is really more than one.
Nobody asked that question.
You weren't even thinking that?
Nobody asked
What if you have more than one? Not even remotely. Well, okay, then let me see if I... Well done, sir. This is my cross plate. The GT, got it used from Gear Peddler, not Gear Peddler, the other place, Gear Fix. Gear Fix. And I ride it pretty much all the time except in the deep, deep snow. It's a wonderful little commuter ride. I noticed something though. As I was riding home in very, very slippery conditions or on very, very steep trails. So there's a trail that runs down Aubrey Butte I sometimes take home. It's the most direct route home. Because it's the most direct route home, it's also a little bit hair-raising in turns. Very steep switchbacks like this. I started crashing a lot on it. And I was getting nervous because I don't usually crash riding mountain bikes. I'm usually a fairly competent mountain biker. I was crashing left and right on these one section of turns, and I thought I realized what the problem was. I thought it was due to the brakes. You see, the bike I have has cantilever brakes, or had cantilever brakes, which are kind of old school, late 70s, early 80s style brakes. And the problem with them is physics. The problem is physics. The physics of a cantilever brake is, well, you could see it in that picture. The cable to your brake lever gets pulled upward, which pulls these at a diagonal. Now, these have to go in, but because the cable is being pulled at a diagonal, you're losing. Tyler's shaking his head, looking at me like, what the hell's wrong with you, man? Why are you even using these things? So the problem is that you're losing some of the force due to the braking. So in other words, I got the brakes buried and the wheels are still spinning if I'm going fast enough. So, I was laughing at me again. You guys are mean today. So now mountain biking wise, I did use those back in the day. This is back, very, very mid to late 80s. Everybody used the cantilever brakes. And road bikes still use a design of cantilever brake, but you don't need this kind of stopping power on a road bike that you need on a mountain bike all the time. So then the next iteration of brakes were called V-brakes. Now I don't know why they're called V-brakes, because the cantilevers look like a V shape. V-brakes look like this. These are called U-brakes, these are called V-brakes. Go figure that one out, I have no idea. So V-brakes, or linear pull brakes, which is the technical term, linear pull. Now the way these work is genius. 2 vertical pieces of metal, usually CNC'd steel. The wire comes across them like this, so when you yard on the brake lever, it pulls the wire across, which is the same direction the pads move, which means you have 0 loss in force. Genius. Makes perfect sense, right? Makes absolutely perfect sense. So I upgraded to these back in the early 90s, right as soon as I could, as soon as they became like mass produced. Nowadays, nobody uses either cantilevers or V-brakes. Everybody uses disc brakes on their bikes now, because that's the... But the thing was, my cross bike was made in 2011 or 2012, and if you'll notice on the you can't tell on this one, there's no tabs for disc brakes, because cyclocross bikes up until 2 years ago you weren't allowed to compete using disc brakes. Why? Because the French said so. I don't know. The UCI said you weren't allowed to use disc brakes on cyclocross bikes. So I'm SOL. So I did some reading. I said, how can I improve the efficiency of my cross bike's braking? I'm tired of almost dying on these trails. Because the trails, not only are steep, they fall off the side of the hill. If I crash in the wrong place, I'm going to go rolling 20 feet down a hill with my bike attached to me.
Stop going down that trail.
It's fun, man! That's such a sensible thing. Just go somewhere else. It's the... Never mind. That's exactly right. But the thing was, I was still nervous about not having the stopping power, because if I can't stop on a trail, what if a car cuts in front of me? Can I stop then? And I'm thinking probably not for the same reason. I'm flying along. So I did some research, and they kept talking about mini V-brakes. They said you can't put full-size V-brakes on a cyclocross bike with the levers that come with the bike. You'd have to change out a whole bunch of stuff, and I didn't want to do all that. I said, there's got to be a way to put V-brakes on a cross bike, and it turns out the solution was what are called mini V-brakes, which are these guys. So full-size V-brakes on a mountain bike are about 1 inch longer, which give you more torque, Archimedes, more torque, or more leverage. These are a little bit smaller, but the idea was, are these, even with a little less torque than a full-size V-brake, better than a cyclocross brake operating at full efficiency, all things being equal? That makes sense? So I decided to test it. Here's my methodology.
Of course you did.
Of course I did. So here's the house across from my house. My house is right here. This is the house across the street. It's hard to tell from the Google Earth shot, but it's got a pretty steep driveway right here. So what I did was, I put the old brakes, I had the old brakes on, left them on, and ran a number of trials where I started at a track stand at the top of that driveway and then just let go. And rolled all the way to the bottom, all the way down. As soon as I left the driveway here, I started controlled braking on my bike. Started controlled braking. I had a tape across the whole road. Here's my son helping me measure. And I took the measurement, as you can see he's off sometimes. I took the measurement where my hub came to rest. And I did that a number of times with the cantilever brakes. And then I had gotten the V-brakes from Gear Peddler actually. And then I put those on and tested the exact same thing. Here's my data. Did I waste my money by putting the V-brakes on, or did it improve my braking? That's how long it took me to stop in feet with each of the types of brakes. Okay? Now it looks good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It looks good. It looks very, very good. I mean, these are all in the 20s. And these are all in the mid to high teens, maybe some low teens in there too. I did skid on this one. I made a note of that. Every other stop I did without skidding, and I don't like skidding for stopping because you kind of lose control of where the vehicle's going down with a car or a bike. You don't really know what's going to happen. So everything else was controlled skids. I used the exact same tires with the exact same pressure, the exact same hill, every position. The days, although they were different days, the atmospheric conditions were similar, so the rubber wouldn't have been stickier on one day versus the other. I tried to control for as much as I could. So now my question is this. It looks like they are better, right? Let's start with this. Get these into your machines. How about L1, L2? Cantilever, V. L1, L2. Let's take a few moments right now, get these in, make some histograms, make some box plots, talk about that, and then talk about how we can formalize the decision. Because I agree with you. It looks like they look good. They look good.